So let's start getting ready to stitch. Now that we've had the sandwich made and we've got it pinned, I want to show you a couple of feet that I have. You don't have to have these feet. You can use your regular foot on your machine. This, let's see this bar right here? And it runs down the center of the foot. This is called a ditch quilting foot. And what happens is this, you just run this right down the seam, and it helps you line up and stay in what is called the ditch of the seam. I can show you on mine. I don't use this one. I don't prefer my quilts being done like this. And I can even show you why. It's supposed to stay in the seam, okay? But this has come off just a little bit, and what that's telling me is my needle is off a little bit. It's not really centered. I didn't see that until, of course, I'm done. So I can take some time now and get friendly with the seam ripper. We don't like that, okay? So I very, very rarely use this. I've never liked this stitch. You really have to watch what you're doing and go really slow. Otherwise, it kind of trails off, and that I don't like that. So I have the foot. I don't use it very often. What I use, what I like, and this is called the applique. I think it is. Yeah, an applique or a satin stitch. And this is a clear foot, so I can see more of what's going on when it's actually being stitched. Again, you know, you've got your regular foot too, and now I don't know what machine you're using, so I don't really know what your foot looks like, but most of them are the metal kind of shaped like this, and that's fine. They usually have a little line, and you can stay lined up with that. I have a computerized machine which gives me lots of options for, you know, a decorative seam, and so that's what I've always used. But even your basic sewing machine is going to have like a zigzag stitch. And with the quilt like this, I want my seams to be fun. So I'm going to use my favorite stitch, which is kind of a curve back and forth, not really a zigzag. It's kind of a curve back and forth. And honestly, it's my favorite because it's very forgiving. I can make my stitches grow out a little. I can adjust them to be a little longer, so it'll swerve back and forth a little longer, or shorten them if I wanted it to give that really quick effect. But also, if I zig off a little bit off the seam, it's not going to be as noticeable. So I've always used, I'm going to say a majority of my quilts and projects, I've used that seaming. So go ahead and decide what it is that you want to do. Stitching in the ditch is very nice and elegant. You basically just see it on the back. Okay. Again, that's not my favorite, so that's not the stitch I'm going to use. You can stitch anywhere on your seam that you want to. You don't have to stitch in the ditch either. There's also stitching, and it's not really a stitching, it's more like a tie. You can tie the quilt down. I've mainly seen it on quilts that are made with blocks, and then on each corner of the block and maybe in the middle, they take like a yarn and string it through and actually tie it down. I've done that on block quilts, and you know, it's nice. I like that. It gives it more of an old-fashioned look to it also, and you know, my opinion. But on a strip quilt, to tie it down, you're going to have to like make a grid. So you could actually take your painter's tape or something and, you know, lay it out so you could know where to stitch around it. That's not for me on a strip quilt. So, but just give you another option. So go ahead and look over your machine and see what kind of stitch. You might even want to take a practice fabric, maybe the size of a napkin or something. And with your, if you can put 3 pieces together, your batting and a front and a back, just to give you a little practice and how it's going to feel. It feels very different pulling a quilt through a 3-ply, you know, fabric through than just sewing on a regular, just 2 pieces of fabric together. So my recommendation, especially for the new people, go ahead and try stitching a couple of different stitches on a sample, and you know, maybe even draw some lines on it so you can see how it would be to zigzag across it, and go ahead and just practice some stitches out for a little while. You've taken some time making this, so take some time in choosing what kind of stitch you're going to want to help decorate. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we'll be back in a little while.